E tani shikues nderuar, juftoj ta ndiqni intervistën me shefën e Bashkimit Evropian Kosovë, Natalia Apostolova. Ju vazhdoni të na shkruani në kallxo.com edhe deri te ajtën e ardhshme, natën e mirë.
Procesi për liberalizimin e vizave për Kosovën tani nuk është duke i numëruar ditët dhe javët, por mund të themi se duke i numëruar orët, dhe ky është një lajm i mirë, është një histori e re për Kosovën, edhe UEFA, edhe liberalizimi i vizave.
Unë jam shumë i bindur se në fundvitin e këtij viti rinia jonë, bizneset tona intelektuale tonë do të lëvizin ndershëm anë kënd e Evropës.
Sot kosovarët e dinë edhe ditën e afërt se kur ata mund të lëvizin pa vizën në vendet e Bashkimit Evropian.
Burime ju dhe qytetarëve. Se na si zyrtarë, si ministra kena pas viza gjithë, se kena pas problem, po më në fund të zgjidhëm problemin për qytetarët zakonshëm.
A keni vizë?
Çështja e liberalizimit të vizave si koncepti i Kosovës, çato punë që ke mujtë me kryer për 90 ditë, ai kem kryer.
Vitin tjetër duhet që pa humbur kohë të kryen punë të tjera të rëndësishme, si ratifikimi i marrëveshjes për shënimin e vijës kufitare me Malin e Zi, për të dhënë fund izolimit dhe për t'i hapur rrugë liberalizimit e vizave nga Bashkimi Evropian.
A keni vizë?
Okej, hajde se militojmë.
Gëzuar.
So, we've made this collage of promises, Ms. Apostolova, that have been done to the public who's watching the interview tonight. This minister is heard saying, former Minister of European Integration, that in a few weeks the mission is over. In the meantime, there have been two other ministers of European integration. We've had 3 of the last prime ministers of Kosovo promising visa liberalization. So I want to immediately, how come that Kosovars who are on this side of the border are conditioned by this demarcation, while the same citizens, Montenegrins on the other side of Montenegrin border, got the visa liberalization without being conditioned? They are people of the two sides of the border, but being treated differently in terms how they can travel to the EU. What do you say to them?
First of all, the border demarcation is only one of the conditions which still Kosovo needs to meet. So this example of the two sides of the border is important, but it's not enough. So in the conditionalities which were put in front of the other Western Balkan countries, there were, of course, conditions which were met, and after that the Commission has proposed to the Council, which is the procedure, to give the green light for the visa-free regime of the citizens of these countries. In Kosovo, this what we saw now in your reportage has happened, I think, something like 2.5 years ago. Then the Commission gave its proposal for visa-free regime, which has to be adopted by the Council. It went to the Parliament, and in this proposal it has set a very clear language that 93 out of the 95 conditionalities have been met. So, hoping that at the moment when the Parliament and the Council will have their vote on the visa-free regime, these two conditionalities will already have been met. What happened in reality? First, the border demarcation.
Let's talk about why the conditionality for Kosovo. That was my question. Why was it sneaked in? Some people explain about being sneaked in, and now Mogherini cannot go back on something what some bureaucrat put in this document so many years ago. So we are conditioned to this.
First of all, it's not sneaked in, because from the very beginning, when your government, your foreign minister signed actually the, let's say, contractual interaction, what needs to be done in order to have the visa-free regime, these two conditionalities were in.
Which recent events? Because
I'm
recent events we have demarcation between Montenegro and Croatia.
Yes, I'm speaking about the arbitrage which has happened by 2 of our member states. And this brought as well a very strong reaction by the president of the Commission, who very openly, loudly and clear said that the enlargement package from now on is never going to allow inside a country which has not solved its borders.
Enlargement package, yes, but visa liberalization is not enlargement package.
Of course.
It's something else.
Nevertheless, knowing what happened between two of our member states, the border demarcation was put as a conditionality, and even if we discuss it now, yes or no, it is there. So this is very clear, the message has been passed, the Assembly has it in its hands, and here let me again call on the politicians in Kosovo really to think twice if they would like to keep hostage the youth, the normal citizens who really want to travel, see their families, to get access to cultural heritage in Europe, only because of some small political party individual interests who are hampering at the moment the vote in the parliament. But this is not enough.
Are you also not feeling quite the pressure that you are putting the Kosovars against the wall and making them look towards the east rather than towards the west?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. First of all, the demarcation as an agreement has been passed quite easily with Montenegro, in Montenegrin parliament, which brings a conclusion that obviously there is no dispute.
There. So but here there is.
Exactly. So it is a political, interest which has made this very technical issue a very big problem. So I wouldn't say that the EU bears the responsibility of putting Kosovo people next to the wall and denying them the access to this.
Why don't you find ways to punish politicians if you say politicians are the ones responsible, but you're punishing the people?
The EU is not in a position to punish anyone. Let's be very clear. The only way the EU is involved in this very important challenge is to give advice. This is the mandate of my office. This is what I'm doing as USR. And I tend to say
your advice? Put
my
it in the
advice is to solve the issue as soon as possible, to leave the small political interests and to get Kosovo interests, national interests.
But whose personal interest will be fulfilled if demarcation is moved few hectares there and here? What is the interest?
Honestly, you have to put this question not at all to me, but to those who are voting.
It's not just an issue in Kosovo, it's a bigger issue where people feel strong about their identity, about their border, and they do not want to exchange that for just traveling. We're not asking to be part of the EU, just to travel to the EU.
Okay, we can go in this direction, exchanging a lot of opinions, but let me bring you back to the earth and to the very essential moment, which is your government has agreed to have 2 more conditionalities which still are not met. One of them is the border demarcation. We as EU, me, myself, as USR, all my colleagues, ambassadors, including our American colleagues who work hand in hand with us in this, have made enormous pressure on all political circles.
They explained back to you.
In the moment when still this government had 2/3 majority in the parliament. Now, with a majority of 61, I would say that they really have a challenge. But honestly, we have warned about that. And it's not quite fair to leave the responsibility on us, because at the end of the day, the European Union has very strict rules of procedure.
Which didn't have with Montenegro, with Albania, with Macedonia.
You
didn't have those strict rules.
A living organism. Each new accession is bringing its own problems, and because of that, each new accession circle is very much more defined in order to avoid the problems which have happened in previous enlargement processes. But I still am a bit disappointed that you do not pay the necessary attention to the second criteria, which is fight
No,
against corruption.
I will talk about that, but I just want, I'm
crime.
disappointed that you want to, demarcation you don't see as double standard, like Kosovars see double standard.
Absolutely not. I think that
Because
the demarcation is not a
Montenegrins
double
weren't punished, Albanians in Albania, Macedonians, Serbs, they will not, Serbs do not have demarcation with us, they were not punished regarding visa-free movement. So how do you explain to people it is not a double standard?
It's part of the dialogue, which is going to solve all these very sensitive issues, which are going to happen sooner than later.
But they get the visas and they go through the process of dialogue. Why we don't get the visas and don't resolve this in dialogue in the future?
Look, first of all, Kosovo has to show some kind of sustainability, goodwill, and credibility in its European path. So you have done so much. 93 of the 95 criteria were met, which is really quite encouraging for this young democracy, because Kosovo is 10 years of a democratic life. Compared to others in the region, you really have done a lot, and this is to be commended. Nevertheless, and this has to be absolutely clear made, even from this forum, there will be no exclusions.
Let's talk about anti-corruption standard, which you know that I wanted to talk about as a second subject. Tell me specifically, can you be very clear with indicators? What do you want to see in 2018 happen in Kosovo in order for this condition to be fulfilled?
Yes, I can be very clear, because I hear more and more from different circles in Kosovo that this is a process, so in a way we cannot quantify it. In one way this is true, because fight against corruption and organized crime is, should be perceived not only as a criteria for the visa liberalization, this is one part of it, which I'm going a little bit to elaborate more, but as well it's an ongoing process, which is part of the overall enlargement process of all accession countries. So it is part of, let's say, the Copenhagen criteria. It is part of the enlargement stages, which are monitored through the different even stages of the negotiation process.
But other countries are being asked for 10 to 15 years to fulfill this.
This is going to happen as well with Kosovo on the
but
overall perspective.
Over visa liberalization, what are indicators we need to fulfill?
We, in order to be concrete and to have some kind of measurable experience on the basis of which to have some conclusion if you are meeting the criteria or not, of course with the help of the Commission, have selected a certain number of cases which are high, let's say, standing cases, and where we would like to see how your institutions perform.
Can you publish these indicators?
Well, they are not indicators. These are cases where we are monitoring, first of all, how fast the court case has been investigated.
Which cases? Can you mention them?
At which stage is this case at the moment? How much time it took in order to enter the court? Is there a final decision? How high profile are the people who are indicted there? And if there is a final decision, if there is confiscation. This is one part of the process which we are monitoring in order to get the assessment for the visa-free regime.
Until now,
Second
how are
thing,
we in that?
Let
Can
me,
you
if
give
possible, finish the whole process so that it is clear to your public what we are doing as well. This is one part of the criteria, so to say. But there is a second one which also has to show that the institution is really taking seriously all these reforms which need to be done. So, for example, we are very much happy that you managed to get some of the reforms, which are very important, into the legal framework.
Which ones?
For example, now you have a proposal for the Penal Code and Penal Procedure Code, because you may know that the backlog of cases, one of the causes for this backlog is some kind of insufficient legal framework which reflects into the Penal Code and Penal Procedure Code. Second, another issue which has to be closely monitored is the very short time of the investigation. Then, the issue about confiscation. There, still, the legal framework is not well developed. And another issue which I would like to praise as well, Kosovo, is that you managed to get as well the database quite well for some of the cases. And as well, you managed to get a multidisciplinary investigative court, let's say, team, which is working on these cases. But Kosovo is, as I said, quite a young democracy. Your institutions are still I would say, not well equipped with all this expertise, and that's why the EU, my office, and a very big part of our assistance is concentrated on support of rule of law reform. So this is going to help Kosovo on the overall rapprochement, so to say, to the EU, which is very important for you, for your European path. But at the moment, we are monitoring, let's say, precisely these cases.
But which cases? Can you tell our public?
These are cases
this is
which...
a transparent system and people can see
these cases
monitoring.
are monitored by experts in the Commission in Brussels and also by the legal experts who are working in my team. I'm not going to disclose them because anyhow they're not going to...
Don't disclose the experts. Can you disclose the cases?
No, the cases. I cannot talk about the cases at all. I'm not going even to mention numbers. But I just want to reassure you that they're very carefully...
How do we know whether Kosovo has met or not? Because if you say that this is an important condition and you don't tell the public, dear public, if you see these cases resolved, then visas... we can talk about visas. If you're not being transparent, why should we trust you?
These are cases which are very well known to the Ministry of Justice.
Not to us. We don't trust our leaders, clearly. Why can't you make them public?
That's not a good sign. But nevertheless, I must reassure you that these cases are really very well selected. But I would like to make one important clarification here. The fact that Kosovo will meet the, let's say, indications in these court cases does not mean that the whole process has to stop. You have fulfilled what is needed to be fulfilled and the process should not go further. It is extremely important that there is sustainability and there is progress into the rule of law, fight against corruption and organized crime, because this becomes more and more and more related not only to the economic growth, businesses, education, we'll speak about that, but it becomes very much essential as well for the safety and security of the region. And this region is neighboring the EU. So this is the target of our global strategy. So among the cases,
can you at least share with us how many of these cases are high-level cases, which we know some EULEX dealt with? How many of these are EULEX is responsible for?
Most of the cases are high-level cases.
Is EULEX responsible for them?
Well, EULEX, as you know, is stepping back from its executive mandate.
Having some top-level cases dealt with.
They are having quite, let's say, a limited number of cases, and of course, some of these cases are as well part of this group which we are monitoring.
Okay, so your EU experts are also evaluating their EU colleagues. Are you saying that?
Well, I wouldn't call EU colleagues the people who are part of an independent judicial court system. Because, as you know, lawyers, advocates, prosecutors and judges are totally independent, be it EU or another nationality.
But you are not asking responsibility. You're not asking responsibility from EULEX. Basically, what I want to know is, do we have any value with EU experts that you're talking about, with EU prosecutor judges, when we know that Macedonia and Albania, which has a huge problem with its rule of law, justice reform, gets visa liberalization, while we had so many EU experts and EU prosecutors, now you're talking about them experts, and we got no visa liberalization. So the value of your EU assistance seems to be null in terms of what it does for the citizens in organized crime.
The value of EU assistance to the judicial system in Kosovo is indispensable. I will start from the time when EULEX started to work here.
I know, but why doesn't it translate to fulfilling anti-corruption cases? Why doesn't it translate like that?
Because EULEX and any of the judicial systems and courts do not perform in void. In order to have successful court cases, you need as well political will from Kosovo institutions and elite, but as well cooperation and conducive environment in order to come to the end of these cases. And I think that this is something very important which Kosovo citizens need to understand. Even if you have the most brilliant EULEX judges who perform in the most magnificent and brilliant way, at the end of the day, EULEX judges and court performs in an environment which has to cooperate.
But that's why they came here, because the environment was difficult for locals.
Protection of witnesses and whistleblowers, you have to have the framework to do that. At the moment, this is something which is into consideration. You just managed to get the draft law, which has been in a process and which still needs to be implemented.
But an able prosecutor can push these cases unless you are also noting that they are mediocre EU prosecutors and judges. Maybe that is also the fault of why we didn't get
I wouldn't say
to
so.
where
Absolutely
we want to be.
Not.
So everybody who's EU is good, all who are locals are bad. Is that what you're saying?
Not at all.
Okay. Be clear
Absolutely, absolutely not. ULEX does not has the responsibility of this, what has happened into the judicial system in Kosovo.
Nothing.
I would say
a 5-year
that
mission to fight corruption, in particular, high-level crime, has no responsibility.
Successes like your customs started to be developed from now. EULEX has contributed extremely to the police developments, especially in the north, where as a result of the dialogue we have already very important achievements.
And the highest level of organized crime in Kosovo, in the north?
The judicial implementation in the north has happened only and with the exceptional work of EULEX judges, strengthening division, who are navigating the judges by hand and who are even introducing them into the Kosovo legal system, because as you may know, these judges are Serb judges who have worked in a different environment. So you cannot expect them from day one to start to be as professional as the society needs.
I agree that there are successes, and you talk about sharing responsibility for success. My only question is, do you also share responsibility as EU rule of law mission institutions or EU for not successes? Or everything what is good, you share responsibility. Everything that is bad, you think you don't share responsibility as
First of all,
you have no criticism. Are you sharing responsibility on failure to get the organized criminals?
I wouldn't
have
say
we failed
that we
together, locals and internationals? Have we failed in
I could not make such a
years?
distinction who has failed and who has not. The fact at the moment is that there are still very high corruptive cases where, unfortunately, we do not see sentences, we do not see confiscations, and because of that, the track record of Kosovo at the moment is still not at the level to allow visa liberalization.
Now, people find that if Serbia started 5 wars, it has inherited 250,000 people who were involved in wars, potential criminals, murderers. How come? How do you explain to our audience that citizens of Brussels are not waking up next to someone, they're not afraid to waking up to someone having committed crimes in Bosnia, Croatia, Kosovo, but you are afraid of troublemakers that come from Kosovo? How come that perception of Kosovars as troublemakers is bigger than the troublemakers that can come from a country that led 4 wars in former Yugoslavia? What do you say to people who make that comparison?
I will immediately give you an example. At the moment, what is very important for the European Union is to have credible partners. The credible partners are partners who stick to their obligations, to their promises, and to their international contractual liability. Let's give an example. Very recently, in December, we saw one interesting move in the Parliament, which was initiated by 43 members of this Parliament, which decided to abrogate the Specialist Chambers law. I want to give this as an example of how fast and how volatile is the credibility and the feel of trust between partners. So if this could happen so easily on 22nd of December, and it could provoke such a strong international reaction, and still, even today, this abrogation is alive and it is in the Parliament, I think that you find the answer of your question.
Do you think that your credible partners that you signed these special chambers for would just with open arms expect a court who will arrest them? These are potential partners who will be arrested. It's very normal that they go and do this in the middle of the night. It's typically the reaction of people who might find themselves in the dock Isn't it obvious to you? Why are you surprised?
Look, representing 28 member states, we do not take any of these actions emotionally. We do not have the right even to do that. The very valid point is what it means credibility in international relations.
But they are going to be chased. They have no credibility. Court is going to get some of them.
The whole enlargement process and the whole negotiations process, which sooner than later Kosovo also will start, is exactly this. It's a question of reliability, it's a question of partnership, it's a question of cooperation, of goodwill. So I would just say that it's really a very bad sign, this what happened. And on many other occasions, I called on the politicians, exactly these politicians.
But this has nothing to do with visa liberalization. It may sound to some ears like you're waiting for Kosovars to screw up in something, and you say, look, this is another condition why we cannot trust you. There'll be many screw-ups with these leaderships. We see them every day. So are you serious about two conditions, or you will add conditions for visas as you go along? You will have a big loop to see what bad is happening, and you will watch Kosovars why you wouldn't give them visas. Is this what the relationship will be between EU and Kosovars?
No, it is not this the relationship, and actually the European Union is one big organization which has very strong rules. So we in any case and in no way can add further conditionalities to the conditionalities which you have already. And very precisely, as I said, we really try to make it any detail of this process to be really very much scrutinized in order to find the way and the moment when we are going to assess that this has already been met, especially for the fight against corruption and organized crime. It's extremely important.
So what do you want to see happening, to close the subject of special court, what do you want to see happen if after that, that very dramatic middle of the night moment, the signatures were not taken in the end all the way. The initiative did not succeed. They failed. Therefore, what worries you? Especially if publicly you have parties like Vetëvendosja, LDK, and NISMA, who has told us that they will not push further this abrogation. What worries you?
My worries come from the fact that we know very well the procedures, how the assembly works, and as well the legal procedure, how a motion like this one could be left aside. Actually, you may know that this procedure is never going to end until the motion, actually the signatures of the motion of 43 members of the parliament are not withdrawn. And not only 3, 5 or 6 of them. We need, according to the procedures of the assembly, 43 of them have to withdraw their signatures in order the motion to die.
But if the initiative is not brought into parliament at all, if the initiative is not pushed further, why do you take it seriously?
Because it exists. It might be not pushed further now, but it might be pushed further on any other occasion. It is there.
It was always there even before.
No, as a motion, it was not there.
So you want 43 members who signed that initiative to withdraw?
Let me put it like that.
What would you want to see?
We could not put, of course, guidelines, or we would not direct at all the members of the parliament how they're going to take up the issue. What I did, meeting all political...
It was under pressure when it was pushed through. It was under pressure. You directed it. Why can't you direct it now? It was done under pressure.
I'm not going to comment on that. I was not here, and I don't believe that the EU has put the pressure. Anyhow, I met all political parties in the assembly on that issue, and I was extremely clear. First of all, I was joined by member states ambassadors, because our voice is very strong when we are together. So we explained the consequences of this if it goes further. I don't want at all to be seen as the EU directing the internal affairs of Kosovo. We are not here for that, and we don't have the right. We have the red lines. We are diplomats. Nevertheless, it's very important that Kosovo people, through the representatives who they have elected in this assembly, know what might follow up if this motion goes on, if the law is abrogated, and what will be the consequences as well in the credibility as a partner of the EU for Kosovo.
Do you think this affects indictments and they will be an excuse, oh, here's this 43 signatures, an excuse to further wait and wait throughout this year?
I don't think that there is at all a connection between this, let's say, the motion and what happens with the law and also the indictments per se.
Why are we waiting so long? Why isn't the court just getting on with the work?
This is a question which has to be put, of course, to the chambers, because, as you know,
to the chambers.
this
We
is
get no answer.
Independent body, independent organization which has its own rules. And as you can imagine, if the case is ripe, if the case is ready, of course, the prosecutor will present it to the specialist court.
How long do you think we should wait the ripeness to happen?
I cannot guess, but I can share with you the impatience that,
are you also impatient?
Of course, I think that it is a European institution, and of course, European member states want to see how this starts to function, how it works. It's one of the very expensive European projects, so to say. So I cannot...
As EU, are you ready to forever fund without seeing some indictments happen? How long will you wait to pay salaries before they produce results?
I cannot comment on that, of course. But nevertheless, of course, this is something very important. We are all looking into the specialist court and chambers to start to perform as soon as possible, because I think that there is a very big misinterpretation about the mandate of the specialist chambers in Kosovo. And I was appalled to hear comments, even from political party leaders and caucus leaders in my meetings, what they percept is the specialist chambers and what is its objective and its aim. And it was really painful to hear that we, the EU, have created a court in order to satisfy our values and in order to have some kind of a cleansing policy towards KLA, towards one nation, ethnicity.
But the criticism about ethnicity, that the people who will be tried, let's go to facts, without any emotion, people who will be tried are going to be Albanians. They're not. The rest, the people who are going to be tried, there's not going to be any. Former parliamentary general.
Because this is not...
Of course, they're going to be potential criminals, but correct. Albanians.
No, I do not agree with you.
You don't.
And I'll explain why.
So they will be from where?
The specialist chambers are actually created in order to follow up on these crimes which were expressed, and incidents and accidents expressed into Dick Marty's report. He was tasked by the Council of Europe, and there inside there are individual, let's say, responsibilities of certain people. First of all, no one has limited the circle of the people who might be indicted only to Albanians. First, it's not ethnicity based. You can have as well...
Dick Marty is very limited.
You can have any other
Albanian
ethnicity.
Leaders who were, some of them, part of the KLA.
Yeah, but there might be people who are as well involved into the crime scenes. There are people who are also involved and share responsibility, and they might be from any other ethnical origin. No one is limiting it only to Albanians. This is something very important which has to be made clear.
I hear this for the first time, so let's stop here. It's very, very interesting explanation to my audience.
But then, it all depends on the evidence and on the court case which is going to be done in order to get a final court decision.
But if indictees are all Albanian, why are people wrong to think that this is also a court that is particularly targeting people of one ethnicity?
How do you know who are going to be the indictees?
Because I read Dick Marty report. I read.
But nevertheless, in this report, whatever is said is, of course, aiming the territory of Kosovo, and it could have spillover effect as well on other territories. But as well, it is not limited to the ethnicity only of Albanians. The fact that you have names may be there.
Victims are Roma, Serb, Albanians. The victims are multi-ethnic.
Yes, of course.
The perpetrators are Albanian.
But as we know, in a war, terrible things happen. In a war, you have crimes which are committed by individuals.
We had war crimes in Kosovo, war crimes trials in Kosovo against former mayors. So it's not news to us for former KLA fighters to be indicted.
Let me give an example that EULEX has already been involved in the trial and investigation of some war crimes, and you know it. And for example, EULEX has been investigating and trialing and sentencing as well Serbs, who have as well created some, let's say, convictions and some misgivings towards Albanians. This is an issue which has to be really very clearly explained, because no one is targeting KLA. No one is speaking about a collective responsibility.
But you also have to target, what do you say to audiences who have about 10,000 people missing in Kosovo, and their criminals are not being chased in Serbia? That's the problem. You're not creating specialist chambers for these victims, because Dick Marty didn't write a report on that. But that doesn't mean crimes didn't happen. Crimes happened, but there was no Dick Marty writing about those missing persons.
But now let's be very clear.
What do you say to those that their justice will not be done?
Yeah, I think the question is very wrongly put, because we are not going to criticize Dick Marty about what he wrote and what he did.
But we're
at the same time,
putting the facts
the
on
missing
the table.
The missing people, of course, it's a terrible phenomena, and it's on both sides, by the way. Let's not forget, because you have missing people on that side, but you have missing people on the Serbian side as well.
1,500 Serbs?
Exactly.
And about 8,500 Albanians. Since you cannot talk in detail about this, this strategy, I would like to go to the biggest, I think, development deal that Kosovo signed recently, which was the deal that Kosovo signed with Contour Global about the energy, new power plant to be built. Now, considering that European Union is signed the Paris Agreement on climate change, what is your position, EU positions, on seeing Kosovo build another power plant, which will...
we know what is the situation, and we know that Kosovo, of course, benefits from very big resources of lignite. Nevertheless, for us as EU, the values, as you said, are very clear-cut. For us, environmental aspects of any kind of industry are of utmost importance. For us, what is very important is to see what kind of strategy now, energy strategy, Kosovo is going to present together with the deal which was made now with the American company. Because in this strategy, we would like to see renewables, we would like to see all aspects of environment which are met in a certain way.
Do you really expect
to have the plant
renewables?
Working.
Because this,
yes. No, we do not expect. We insist.
But this will fulfill 99% of Kosovo's needs of energy. Where do you see space for renewables?
Well, let me say the following. You have Kosovo A, you have Kosovo B, and you have Kosovo C. The EU took a commitment to decommission Kosovo A, because as you know, there are also very big problems with contamination, water waste, dumps, and so on. On second, Kosovo B, we have committed to spend something between 30 and 40 million euros in order to fix new filters in Kosovo B, which is going to be a huge improvement on the performance at the moment.
When will that happen?
This is going to happen once the deal was signed, which already is the case with Kosovo C, but mainly when we see the strategy and how the strategy tackles these very important environmental aspects, which at the end of the day has to fall with our values.
With the Contour Global Agreement, now that it is open to us journalists, so the agreement has just become open, we can see that we are, as consumers, we are obliged to buy energy from Contour Global at the price of 80 euros per megawatt. Although, for example, some supplier in Vienna may produce it for 50 euros a megawatt, it obliges us into a long-term deal, which is bad for the Kosovo consumer.
You may understand that I'm not going to comment on a decision, purely commercial decision, which was taken by the government. For us, the very important aspects are, as I said, the environmental one. Each
What about the
government,
market, liberalization of market standards we must fulfill if we are members?
That's very important.
As Athens Treaty
This is
signatories?
very important. But again, this is a decision of the government, and I think that your questions are very much valid to be put there.
I want to, the final topic with you is about security. And first we start with a bridge in the north. Your boss, Federica Mogherini, promised the bridge to be ready last May. Why isn't she not keeping the promises?
I wouldn't say that she is not keeping the promises, because if you look at the bridge, it is nearly finished.
Nearly,
the bridge
it
has
should have been finished 6 months ago.
a fantastic
by the
outline. The
contract.
bridge is to the highest standards of connectivity in Europe even, because we, not only the design that is very modern, but you have bollards which are very much typical for all European
But was
cities.
contract supposed to be finished?
We are having as well the project about Wi-Fi on the project, and we have another, I would say, concern or a challenge, that the bridge has to be commuted, let's say, bridged with the Serbia on North Mitrovica side. We have the roundabout which has to commute the traffic between the bridge and Krao-Petar Street. So in
why
order
did
to
it delay?
proceed,
Why? Can you explain the delay?
exactly. In order to proceed with, actually, if I have to be very clear, our project is finalized. Which is missing at the moment is actually the conjunction between this project, which has been done and performed by North Mitrovica municipality, and our project. This is a very small line where actually the traffic has to be regulated, but in order to finish this, I need the cooperation and the permit from North Mitrovica mayor and municipality in order to finalize the job. We have managed to do that on several occasions. We have restarted the work, but then because of certain ethnical or security reasons, this permission was withheld. So at the moment, we are again in square, I would say, one, where we are waiting for the permission from North Mitrovica to allow us to finalize the conjunction between the two projects. So let's be very clear. On our side, what our High Representative has promised, to the extent of her responsibility, she has done it.
Can you explain the nature of the security threats apart from the last murder of Oliver Ivanovic? What else has there been that was a legitimate, you would say, legitimate security argument?
Unfortunately, it is not up to us to define the level of concern.
But you weren't given a clear kind of security problem.
We were given a number of cases where ethnical element was involved, where there were, let's say, some petty crime. I cannot quote to you at the moment, but there were certain, let's say, cases where really there was some kind of tension in the north. Kosovo police has as well reported for that. And that's giving a reason for, let's say, the municipality in North Mitrovica to have concerns and to be able to go on with the work only with very strong security precautions, which might be securing it with another, let's say, concrete wall.
Your EU rule of law mission have spoken about intimidation during elections. So what are you doing to address these concerns of the Serb citizens of the north, which actually are linked to their own leaders? They are accusing the Srpska Lista leaders and the bosses of, the non-official bosses of Srpska Lista, that they are intimidating the Serb population.
During the elections, there were, of course, certain calls from different EU observers, even if you want, not on the process, how the elections were held, because I would say that on the election day, the process was quite organized, and I would not say that there were breaches of the procedures.
Oliver Ivanovic spoke about political intimidation, not just pressure.
Very much, let's say, honest to what we know and what we should do. European Union ambassadors here made a statement. And the statement was exactly in that direction. That although the election day clearly stated that the procedure was followed, there were signs of intimidation before the elections. And this, of course, cannot be sustained. So what can we do? I think that, first of all, it's, of course, responsibility of the mayors as well, of the local governance, but as well of the national level in Kosovo to really pay strong attention to what is the situation in the north. And you remember very well that when we heard and we saw that the process of transparency of how some of our projects are rewarded and implemented was not in the very clear and transparent way, we had the strong decision to stop two of the biggest and I would say emblematic projects in the north. So as EU, we stick to our values. As EU, we are very much concerned if the money of EU citizens go in the pockets of shadow or informal economy.
Ms. Apostolova, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you.